I never imagined a panicked manager would find rescue in an unexpected hero. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was Monday morning, and the sky was a dull gray, mirroring the feeling in my chest. The clock ticked loudly in the office, a shrill reminder of the ticking time bomb beneath the surface of my calm exterior. My hands trembled as I organized the reports, my heart racing with anticipation. We were gearing up for the biggest presentation of our careers, and it felt like the weight of the world sat squarely on my shoulders. My boss, Mr. Calhoun, had always been intense, almost terrifying in his passion for perfection. He believed in high standards, and right now, the stakes felt impossibly high. The pressure filled the room like smoke, and every breath felt too shallow that I had worked with my team for months, investing countless hours, sleepless nights, and more coffee than I could count. Just as I thought we were ready, the universe threw us into chaos. Our main client, our golden ticket, had pulled out of the deal. Panic surged through me, a frigid spike of fear that left me breathless. My team, an incredible blend of talent, began to murmur anxiously amongst themselves. I could see the worry on their faces, mirrored by my own. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of a flicker. A figure stood in the distance, cloaked in shadows, like an omen waiting to reveal itself. My heart raced faster. Who was this mysterious stranger lurking just beyond the office window? When they stepped into view, the sunlight caught their silhouette, casting an ethereal glow around them. It was impossible to ignore. "What's happening?" I whispered, my voice shaky. I needed to know, needed to pull back the layers of this strange turn of events. Were they friend or foe? I couldn't shake the ominous thrill that coursed through me. Mr. Calhoun stormed past, his jaw set tight, ignoring the figure entirely. My team fell silent, eyes glued to the doorway. In that moment of uncertainty, I wondered if we'd lost everything. Then, a bizarre thought swirled in my mind. What if this stranger was our chance? The unexpected hero we didn't know we desperately needed? Before I could explore that idea further, the figure stepped forward. A flicker of hope ignited within me, mingling with the trembling fear. I had to know what would happen next. I could feel the tension of the room, thick as molasses, waiting for a reaction. I clasped my hands together to steady my shaking fingers. Had this unexpected hero come to save us, or was it just another false promise in a world full of illusions? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the figure stepped further into the harsh fluorescent glare of the office lights, my heart leapt into my throat. The warmth of hope wrestled violently with the cold grip of anxiety in my chest. They pulled back their hood, revealing a familiar face. It was Jess, a former project manager who had left the company months prior. The moment our eyes met, a swell of emotions crashed into me. Memories flooded back: late-night brainstorming sessions, shared laughter, and the camaraderie we had once nurtured. "Hey, I heard you all were in a bit of a jam," Jess said, their voice steady yet warm, cutting through the tension in the room. A flicker of relief skated across the faces of my team, but my own doubts lingered. I glanced at Mr. Calhoun, whose disapproving frown had deepened, as if Jess had trespassed into forbidden territory. "What do you want, Jess?" he barked, the weight of his authority almost palpable. I could feel each word thudding against my chest, urging me to take control. The last thing I wanted was for my hopes to be dashed again. "I want to help," Jess replied firmly, without a hint of hesitation. "I heard about the presentation and the client pulling out. I might know a few things that could help turn this around." The room shifted ever so slightly, a cautious flicker of interest igniting amidst the uncertainty. As Jess stepped closer, the energy in the office morphed. Inspired whispers beckoned, and my team exchanged glances of cautious hope. I wanted to believe that they could lead us out of the dark. "Let's all take a step back," I interjected, determined to steer the ship despite the storm. "What ideas do you have? We're open to anything at this point." Jess took a deep breath, their gaze ablaze with enthusiasm as they laid out a new perspective. I hadn't considered a fresh approach to regaining the client, one that involved reimagining the entire pitch. I felt the warmth of promise weave its way around the group, and we began feverishly discussing how we could adapt, our voices overlapping in a chorus of creativity. Time seemed to escape us, and the chaotic rhythm of ideas and laughter began to replace the oppressive silence that had hung like a storm cloud just moments before. The clock still ticked unforgivingly, but with every passing second, I could feel the energy shift, lifting the palpable weight from our shoulders. Jess had rekindled the spark that I feared had been extinguished. Yet, just as I felt my heart swell with a burgeoning confidence, a notification pinged on Jess' phone. The joy radiating from them dimmed as they glanced at the screen. My heart sank. The poignant reminder that our victory was still tinged with uncertainty weighed heavy in my soul. "That I am so sorry," Jess said, panic threading through their voice. They looked up, vulnerability brimming in their eyes. "I just got a call about a job offer. It's out of state, and they need an answer soon." A knot formed in my stomach, twisting tighter as the reality of the situation seeped into my bones. Jess had come like a beacon in the storm, but as the news loomed, it felt as though our hope was slipping through my fingers again. "You don't have to decide right away," I urged, desperation snaking its way into my tone. "We still have time to work on this. We can make it work together." But Jess only shook their head, sorrow clouding their expression. "If we don't get this back on track, I can't promise I'll be here when you really need me. I hate to push it, but I have to think of my future too." A thick silence cloaked the room as the weight of Jess' words settled upon us. I had never felt so helpless, caught between the needs of my team and the impending loss of someone who could save us all, while the clock continued its relentless countdown. In that moment, the door swung open again, and in walked a figure I had never expected to see. It was Mr. Calhoun, his expression daunting. "We need to talk," he announced, a storm brewing in his eyes that I felt a chill run through me. What was happening now? The balance we had just begun to establish teetered precariously as the impending dread settled in. Were we losing everything? With each tick of the clock, I could sense the room holding its breath, waiting for a revelation to surface. Would Mr. Calhoun shut Jess out? Would our newfound collaboration crumble before it had even begun? A palpable tension crackled in the air, amplifying the fear that had already taken root. I wanted to scream, to shake some sense into the universe, begging it to give us a break. But hope glimmered faintly. I could feel it pulsing beneath the surface. I just had to push through the chaos and cling to it for a little while longer. However, as I looked around, the faces of my team filled with uncertainty. I couldn't help but wonder, had I taken the very first step down a path that would lead to our ultimate disaster? The tension thickened in the air, curling around us like smoke from a dying fire. Mr. Calhoun stepped further into the room, his gaze scanning each of us with an intensity that threatened to pin us in place. I could sense the unease ripple through my team, their previous spark of hope flickering dimly. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice sharp as a knife. Jess straightened, standing a little taller, their own emotions a collision of bravado and vulnerability. "I was just trying to help," Jess replied, and I could hear the tremor in their voice, the delicate balance of wanting to be strong while standing against a mountain of resistance. "Your team is facing a crisis, and I know how to address it. Mr. Calhoun's brow furrowed deeper, and a sense of dread washed over me. Just moments before, we were electric with ideas, and now the air felt heavy, stifling opportunities before they had a chance to blossom. I recognized that glimmer in Jess' eyes, a flicker of determination fighting against despair. "We appreciate your input, Jess," I interjected, hoping to steer this back to a collaborative task. "But this isn't just about us anymore. We are all facing difficult choices. Jess has an opportunity that could be life-changing. Mr. Calhoun scoffed, dismissing my sanctioning of Jess' participation with a wave of his hand. "This isn't charity work. We need results, not aspirations. You cannot gamble on a fantasy while this client decides our fate." I felt my heart plummet, the words resonating as a cold dawn breaking the warmth of our camaraderie. It was true, our foundation was shaky. The reality I had been pretending to ignore crept closer, the deadline looming like a shadow over my diligence and creativity. I hesitated, searching for a way to align Jess' future with the revived hope for our team. But what if this could work? I pressed, desperate to hold on to that warmth Jess had ignited within us. Together, we could craft a pitch that resonates with them, a tailor-made vision to win them back. Mr. Calhoun's expression turned icy. A gamble on one non-employee with uncertain roots. Foolishness. That sort of thinking is what has brought this company to the brink. Beside me, I could see Jess' shoulders tense, their eyes narrowing in a mix of anger and hurt. The room felt suffocating, a taut wire about to snap, and I was afraid that my plea had only served to twist the knife deeper between them and Mr. Calhoun. Just then, the intercom crackled to life, shattering the thick silence. Excuse me, came the voice of Sarah, our intern, her nerves palpable even through the electronic device. There's, a package that just arrived. They said it's urgent. Where is it? Mr. Calhoun barked, irritated. The tension was already unbearable. Another distraction felt like icing on the cake of discontent. Downstairs by the shipping dock, Sarah replied, her voice shaky. I think it has something to do with the client. A collective intake of breath filled the room. What could it be? My mind swiftly darted through the possibilities, ranging from something benign to visions of contracts or ultimatums. Let's go see what it is, I proposed, hoping we could shift focus. Jess looked hesitant but eventually nodded, their eyes showing a glimmer of resolve. We gathered our things, the air thick with anticipation as we moved toward the exit. The corridor felt impossibly long, the tension palpable as we approached the shipping dock. I could feel Jess beside me, their presence grounding me even in this chaos. We reached the door as it slid open, revealing the glow of the fluorescent lights contrasting with the harsh daylight filtering in from outside. An unmarked box stood on a small table, adorned with a simple label bearing our company's name. What is it? Jess whispered, glancing at me. Only one way to find out. With trembling hands, I opened the box, revealing an array of items that sent my heart into a tailspin. A stack of prototypes, sketches, and mock-ups, all expertly designed to represent a new, innovative direction our client had been dreaming of. It was everything I hoped we could offer, but as I began to sift through the materials, a single folded letter slipped out and fluttered to the ground. I bent to pick it up, the contents sending icy shards through my chest as I read the signature at the bottom. It was from the client. I felt the world tilt around me as I processed the contents of the letter. They want a meeting, I stammered, my stomach twisting with a mixture of dread and sudden realization. In 2 days. And they're looking for a fresh pitch. Suddenly, a sense of urgency filled the room as Jess stepped forward, their voice steady and heartening. If we work together, if we focus on what we have in this box, we can create something that sings for them, something they won't want to refuse. Mr. Calhoun's lips pursed tightly as he surveyed the contents, the tension between him and Jess lingering like the remnants of storm clouds ready to unleash. Everything rested on this fragile fork in our path, but just as we began to strategize anew, the reality of Jess' impending decision hung over us like a dark cloud. Would they accept the job out of state? Would this newfound partnership dissipate just as it had ignited? A sudden weight pressed down on me, and as we strategized, I couldn't shake the feeling that hope might be our only currency moving forward, and that the clock was counting down not just for the pitch, but for the time we might have left together. Every connection seemed to hang in the balance, and I couldn't help but wonder, would Jess be forced to choose between their future and ours? As we knelt around the box, our excitement flowing like a rushing river of potential, the connection between us tightened, yet the unspoken uncertainty lingered like thunder in the distance. I could feel the vibrations of an impending storm echoing in the hollows of our hearts. We were a team poised on the edge of creativity, daring to look beyond the chasm of doubt, but the shadows of decisions yet to be made loomed overhead. Jess seemed lit from within, their enthusiasm casting a bright glow over the brainstorming amid Mr. Calhoun's skeptically tight-lipped demeanor. I admired their ability to stand, so decidedly alive, against the inevitable swirl of anxiety. It was as if their spirits stripped away the layers of static in the air, allowing us to breathe deeply. Let's break down everything, Jess suggested, moving to the prototype sketches, their fingers tracing over each design with the tenderness of an artist. The client is looking for something fresh, something bold. Their gaze met mine, lighting a flicker of hope. We know them, their vision. We can amplify it.mr. Calhoun moved to the opposite end, squinting at the materials, the depth of his furrowed brow signaling his deepening reservations. I nervously chewed on my lower lip. Nothing I could say would likely convince him to shift his beliefs, but I sensed Jess' momentum building. I wanted to feed into that energy, despite the ground on which our faith stood being so fragile. Let's have a brainstorming session, I proposed, uncertain if my voice held any sway. Something collaborative, the three of us. We can lay it all bare and then brainstorm the best course. No ideas are off-limits. I am open to suggestions, but we need to be realistic. Mr. Calhoun replied curtly, though I did catch an edge of curiosity in his eyes, as if a new thought had just crossed his mind, that we can explore those old ideas, too. I added quickly, trying to equate Jess's unorthodox thinking with Mr. Calhoun's tried-and-true strategies, weaving a bridge between us. We need to show them evolution, not just a mirror. Jess nodded vigorously, their spirit undimmed, and we dove into heated discussions that felt illuminating, resonating with potential. As one idea built upon another, I began to feel the strands of hope intertwining, not just in the pitch, but in the bonds forming around our fragile unity. We were no longer three individuals, but a shared heartbeat, thumping with possibility. Minutes felt like hours as we rattled through suggestion after suggestion, on paper, palpable and desperate to take shape. Each time an idea surfaced, I fervently watched carefully for the moment Mr. Calhoun would push back or shut us down. But each time, he stayed silent, caught somewhere in the pull of anticipation. Just when the session peaked with energy, a knock on the door sliced through our fervor, grounding us back into the reality of the moment. I turned my gaze toward the entrance, my heart racing. My stomach knotted as George, our head of finance, stepped inside, his face drawn and anxious. "That I need to speak with you, Calhoun. It's about the client." His words trailed off, casting a shadow over our burgeoning hopes. "Now isn't the time," Mr. Calhoun asserted, a hint of irritation in his voice. But George stepped further inside, urgency stamped on his face. "That it is. They threatened to pull the contract unless we can give them something they desire. They've grown tired of waiting for what they deem nonsense." That a silence followed, expansive and crippling. Each of us felt the weight of those words draping across our shoulders, stifling our fresh momentum and burning the spark of creativity we had ignited. Jess' eyes widened, the light dimming within them, snuffed out by possibility of something worse than the fear we had already faced. Would we lose not just a client, but the chance to change everything? Did they specify exactly what they want? I fought to keep my voice firm, squashing the flicker of panic rising within me. My spirit wrestled against the ropes of despair, wanting desperately to remain strong for Jess, for our team. They want clarity, innovation, something groundbreaking, George continued. And as he spoke, the scowl on Mr. Calhoun's face deepened, but he was already stewing. "Groundbreaking," Calhoun repeated, his voice low and quiet, as if recalibrating our course. "Can we really deliver within the timeline?" "I think we can," Jess said, standing firm, their voice carrying a surge of conviction. "If we work together, if we lean into what the client has shown us, we just need to pull each thread and stitch them into something new. They've given us hints." The glow of determination returned, filling up the empty places that George News had carved out. Mr. Calhoun glanced between Jess and George, a flash of uncertainty breaking through the mask he wore. "And if we can't?" His inquiry broke like glass, sharp and cutting in its honesty. The room held its breath. I could feel the air thickening around us, a web of want and fear tangling together with fierce intricacy. "If we can't," Jess answered, their words steady yet heartfelt, "we won't have lost what we've built here. We'll just have discovered a new direction. And besides, isn't that what innovation is? Falling to rise again." There was a ripple of hope, honey-sweet, softening the heavy anticipation in the air, but just as quickly, the darkness crept back once more, threatening to swallow us whole. But before I could voice my thoughts, another knock broke the pulse of our moment. A young courier stood at the door, breathless. "I was told to drop this off for Mr. Calhoun. Important information regarding our client." A tone of anxiety rippled through the room, but Jess leaned forward, eyes wide with curiosity. What might it be? The question hung in the air, sweet with the taste of potential disarray. That I caught Jess' eyes, imploring them with the depth of my fears. What if this was the catalyst for everything to come tumbling down? Just as the uncertainty settled in its place, the courier extended the envelope, sealing an unknown fate. As Mr. Calhoun ripped it open, a myriad of emotions flitted across his face. I felt a chill run down my spine. Whatever was inside could change everything in an instant. The envelope crumpled in Mr. Calhoun's grasp as he pulled out the letter, his focus narrowing to the words, as if searching for truth amidst the chaos. The room fell into an eerie hush, the kind that precedes an impending storm where all that breathes holds its breath, waiting for the drop. "What does it say?" I asked, my voice trembling with the weight of unspoken fears. Jess leaned in closer, their heart thrumming like a caged bird, desperately seeking a way out. "That I need a moment," he mumbled, his fingers tightening around the paper, crumpling it further, each crease a new manifestation of his mounting anxiety. There was a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes, a side of him I had never seen before. Who was this man who stood so tall and resolute in meetings yet appeared so fragile now? On the precipice of decision, George stood mute, a mixture of concern and impatience simmering in the space where tension clung thickly between us. "We can't afford to waste time, Calhoun. If there's something in there to help us, we need to know now." With deliberate slowness, he glanced up. "It's from the client," he began, his voice lower than a whisper. Just then, the air seemed to shift. "They're reconsidering the direction of our project based on their most recent vision board." "What does that mean?" Jess nearly leaped forward, their sheer desire to grasp the golden opportunity sparking from their core. It was a bittersweet display of hope, dancing around the looming shadows of ego and aspiration. Mr. Calhoun swallowed hard, as if the words were too heavy to carry. "They've suggested a complete overhaul," he finally disclosed, and something inside me twisted, a seemingly endless chain of dread linking to the possibility of our creative labor being dismantled before it even had a chance to see the light. "Overhaul?" I echoed, my mind racing through our ideas discarded, each one now glimmering like a lost treasure. "What if we were just getting started?" "We need to think," Calhoun began, growing taut with tension underneath his rotund exterior. But Jess interrupted, their voice echoing with the fierce passion of stars colliding. "We can innovate. It's not a loss, it's an opportunity." They want boldness. If we show them that we can adapt, we can still show our vision through their request. We have a pulse. We can connect creativity with their demands. I watched in wide-eyed admiration as Jess transformed into a beacon, illuminating the dark corners of our project with fervor. The room felt suffocating yet invigorating in emotional flurry, harkening back to inklings of possibility, like sunbeams breaking through a dense fog. But then a shadow fell again as George stepped forward, a mere spectator to the flame Jess ignited. "What if they think we aren't competent enough to handle this? We leave, and that's it. Project is gone, and we don't say that." Jess' voice rang out, trembling slightly, their resolve wavering just a fraction at the prospect of losing everything. "We won't let what others believe dictate our worth, especially now. This is our chance, our moment to rise above the noise." Calhoun's shoulders relaxed incrementally under the weight of Jess' words. The storm raging inside him began to quiet, if only for a fleeting moment. But the door to doubt had only been inspired to yawning creaks, ready to beckon us back into isolation. "But we need a plan," George pressed, his skepticism a torrent unyielding beneath the fragile bridge Jess had crafted. "A strategic approach can't just be passion. Can we even stretch our ideas to fit their new vision?" The lingering question hovered dangerously nearby, threatening to snuff our newfound hope that we were caught in a cycle of anxiety and bravery, and Jess fully realized it. "Listen, if we can redefine our project by using their board as a canvas, we can and we will gather our strengths, build something dynamic, something that speaks to them and instills everything we stand for." Calhoun regarded Jess, uncertainty mingling with what appeared to be a hint of gratitude. "And if we fail?" he asked, almost pleadingly. "I can't pretend to know what will happen," Jess replied, raw and honest, their voice wavering with the tension of their heartbeat. "But if we don't try, we've already failed." In that moment, something shifted, raw courage swirling in the atmosphere like magic, glimmering innocence stirring a primal urge to move forward together. I noticed the flickers of hope igniting the room again, lingering like an echo of laughter in moments of despair. Just as we began to discuss possible approaches, another knock interrupted our train of thought. The courier re-entered, this time with a broader grin painted across their face. I was asked to return. I believe this is yours. They held up another envelope, but this time, it wasn't addressed to Mr. Calhoun. What's that? I questioned, my intrigue piqued as Jess' eyes widened in recognition. It's from the client again. They must have had a change of heart. Anticipation roared shakily in the chamber as the courier approached Calhoun and placed the envelope into his hands. Time slowed as our collective breath stilled. Curiosity coiled around every single one of us like cascading waves. Pulling the letter out, Mr. Calhoun's brow furrowed deeply. What now? He said just above a murmur, and before we could prepare ourselves for the next turn of fate, he began reading aloud, his voice trembling that as we reconsider our direction. We want to extend an invitation. I felt my heart drop, teetering on the edge of impending revelation, the promise of hope teetering on the knife's edge. Invitations often held meaning, and amidst the chaos, I could feel a new weight dropping onto our shoulders, a call to action laced with both uncertainty and the kindling spark of persistence. But then, as Mr. Calhoun continued reading, his voice cut off suddenly, the color draining from his face, anxiety cloaking the room once again. Calhoun? What does it say? Jess whispered, an urgency evident in their tone as the air thickened once more, this time casting a profound shadow over our fragile hope. I held my breath, the moment suspended in time as we awaited an answer that could unravel it all. The silence enveloped us, heavy with tension, as Mr. Calhoun's eyes darted frantically across the paper, searching for clarity amidst the uncertainty. Jess and I exchanged anxious glances, our hearts synced in a rhythm of dread. George had taken a step back, swallowing his frustration but unable to mask the worry that pinched at his brow. The invitation is to a workshop? Calhoun finally stammered, his voice barely audible. They want us to present our ideas in front of their board this Friday. I felt the world tilt beneath my feet, a rush of conflicting emotions cascading over me. Hope intertwined with terror. How could we possibly share our visions under such pressure? Under the looming threat of judgment from the very people who had deemed our work inadequate just hours before. Workshops are where ideas go to die, George muttered, but Jess's hand shot up, fingers trembling yet steadfast. No, it's where new life begins. We can refine our proposal, get direct feedback. We can pivot based on what they tell us. Jess's eyes brimmed with determination, their fervor igniting a spark of courage in my chest. Refine it. They're going to shred it. George snapped back, the frustration in his voice stark against Jess's hope. Calhoun ran a hand over his balding head, a guilty frown creasing his forehead. We've barely had time to breathe. Can we honestly put something together that will captivate them? Jess stepped forward, unwavering as they clawed at the doubt hanging in the air. We have 2 days, Calhoun. 2 days to transform not just their vision, but ours too. We can do this. We can build something they won't forget. But given the weight of uncertainty, I watched as the hope in Jess's eyes flickered. I wanted desperately to shield them from the mounting pressure that blanketed our team. I believe in you, I said quietly, directing my voice towards Jess. You see the potential where the rest of us can't. We have to trust that. Calhoun and George exchanged wary glances, the tensions between them palpable. Though they wouldn't say it, I could feel their secret worries crowding the room, choking out the fuel Jess' courage had ignited. It was delicate, fragile. We weren't out of the woods yet. Let's draw up a plan, Calhoun said at last, his voice a little firmer, but still wavering under the weight of our fears. I know I've been harsh. We all have. This time, let's focus on preparing something that meets their expectations and transcends the limitations we've been shackled by. A flurry of ideas started to flow, words leaping across the table like sparks igniting a brush fire. I saw Jess catch fire anew, speaking in brilliant bursts, pulling disparate threads of ideas into a cohesive tapestry of vision, all while the doubts glimmered sinisterly along the periphery. At last, we had a plan, an outline we could work with. But the clock was ticking relentlessly. As the sun began its descent, casting a deep orange glow through the window, I felt a pang of loss as it reflected my own fading confidence. Why do I feel like we're running a race we're destined to lose? George muttered, his eyes fixed on the sheets of paper strewn across the table. Because we haven't started running yet, Jess replied, their voice laced with an irony that felt almost contagious. And we're not losing, we're here. Every moment spent fighting just means we're one step closer. And with that, we buried ourselves in a whirlwind of creativity and revision, working late into the night. Somewhere in between the press of exhaustion and hope, we began to forge a vision that was both new and yet wholly ours. But with every tick of the clock, the rising tide of anxiety refused to recede. I stole glances at Calhoun, the tension etched into the lines of his face, the way his fingers drummed nervously against the table. What if he cracked under the pressure? As tiredness began to seep into my bones, settling like a weight mere hours before the workshop, my phone buzzed, a message catching my eye, a message I wasn't prepared for. Tomorrow at lunch, we'll be having an unexpected guest join our presentation. The text was from Jess, and my heart dropped upon reading it, a tumultuous storm brewing inside me. What guest? I gasped in disbelief. Then, another ping. Remember that person from our past? The one who didn't quite believe in us. They want to show up unannounced. Panic ignited within me. My breath became ragged. I glanced at Jess, closing my eyes and hating the notion that everything we'd fought for would hang in the balance in front of someone who had cast aside our dreams once before. Jess, this can't be right, I whispered, the walls suddenly caving in, the weight of 1,000 concerns crashing upon my chest. They just stared, emotions swirling as we stood on the brink of another unfathomable cliff, shadows threatening to obscure our vision once again. The spark we had lit began to flicker, and I couldn't shake the feeling that just when we thought we'd emerged from the darkness, the very shadows we had bravely battled might drag us back down again. The fluorescent lights above hummed with a monotone buzz, a stark reminder of the sterile environment we were forced to endure. I leaned against the cold wall of the conference room, my hands trembling slightly. Jess stood beside me, their expression both resolute and frightened. The unexpected guest was looming larger in my mind, a specter of doubt that threatened to choke the life from our project at SO. This person, who are they? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, yet heavy with unspoken fears. Jess sighed, glancing down at the floor before meeting my gaze. You remember Dakota, right? From university? They were the one who believed our ideas were too naive, too far-fetched. That I nodded, feeling a pit form in my stomach. Dakota had once been our fiercest critic, their words rippling with scorn that knit through our once tightly knit group, fraying our sense of worth. Why would they want to come now? Jess looked away, uncertainty creeping into their features. I don't know. They texted me out of the blue, wanting to see what we've been working on. Part of me thinks it's just to gloat, or to offer help. I countered, trying to grasp at straws of hope, even though every fiber of my being felt taut with anxiety. Maybe, Jess said quietly, but the doubt in their voice was plain. But what if they don't see the progress? What if they find us still failing? What if a knock on the door wrenched my turbulent thoughts into silence? Moments later, Calhoun walked in, a harried expression painted across his brow. I just got off a call with the board. They're anxious to see results. We need to put our best foot forward. Is everyone ready? Ready for what? George scoffed from the corner, arms crossed defiantly. To be judged? George, Calhoun responded firmly, this is our chance. We need to focus on what we can control. His determination was admirable, but the underlying tremor in his hands spoke volumes. I could see it mirrored in George's posture, the way he avoided eye contact, the way he rocked slightly on his heels, a man grasping at the edges of his fragile confidence. And I stood plummeting deeper into uncertainty, searching for some glimmer of faith to latch onto, but finding none. My stomach twisted at the thought of Dakota witnessing our struggle, the memories of their dismissive laughter cascading through my mind like a haunting echo. As the moments crawled by, we fell into silence, the four of us trapped in the same invisible cage. Yet amidst the impending doom, Jess reached forward and grabbed my hand. Their warmth flowed into me like a fragile thread of resilience, the kind that could hold even the most precarious of hopes. Whatever happens, we'll get through this together, Jess whispered, their voice a soft anchor amidst the rising tide of panic. Right? I replied, swallowing hard. We stand together as a team. That's all we can do. The tension in the room flickered as Calhoun shuffled some papers, searching for the missing thread to stitch our confidence back together. And George relaxed slightly, uncrossing his arms. A slow nod crossed both men's faces, and for the briefest of seconds, hope bloomed anew. But then, standing on the edge of that fragile moment, my phone buzzed again. I hurriedly glanced at the screen. A picture from Jess' chat group, an image I hadn't been prepared to see, proof of Dakota's presence. Standing in front of our building, broad shoulders outlined against the gray sky, an uncertain smile on their lips, my heart sank. They're here already? I stuttered, terror swamping the bond Jess had created with our clasped hands. Maybe they got here early to surprise us? Jess ventured, but the confidence was thin, stretched too taut to hold weight. Right? I said, forcing a shaky breath between words. A surprise, and amid my anxious whirlpool of thoughts, a thin strand of memory tightened around my chest, a reminder of how Dakota had once championed their own austerity, the precise, cutting nature of their skepticism. Listen, George interjected, his voice low but firm. If they want to throw judgment, let them. What we have made is ours. We can't waste time worrying about what they think of our pasts. We can only show them what we're capable of now. The workshop is about our evolution, our resilience. It's not just about pressure, it's about transformation. With renewed energy enfolding us, the moments wound together, stretching from scarcity to abundance, as the knots tied in our hearts began to loosen. But as Jess gave me a reassuring squeeze, uncertainty flickered in my mind. What if George was right? What if we failed, and Dakota was there only to reignite the doubt we had fought so hard to extinguish? The door swung open, and there stood Dakota, an unassuming flash of color amidst the drab conference room. The moment froze, eyes locking with the very specter I had feared. Trepidation and raw energy swelled within me. And just as we stood on the edge of revelation, their expression revealed something almost unsettling, almost kind. They stepped in, their voice filling the air. I've come to see what you've come up with. It's time for a second chance, don't you think? Just as a flicker of hope dared to awaken, I couldn't help but wonder if this was truly the lifeline we needed, or just another shipwreck hidden beneath the surface. The moment Dakota stepped forward, a veil of familiarity washed over me, the kind that once promised companionship but now dripped with thinly veiled tension. I remembered their sharp intellect and biting remarks, which had stung like a bee. Even as they approached, my heart raced not from excitement, but from the echo of past judgments reverberating painfully in my chest. Thank you for coming, Jess said, their voice resolute, yet edged with uncertainty. There was a brave attempt at tone, like a fragile flower daring to bloom in the shadow of an approaching storm. That I wasn't sure if you'd even want to see me, Dakota replied, a touch of genuineness in their words that I hadn't anticipated. They looked around at the gathering at us, still hesitant and armed with unspoken animosities, and something softened in their gaze. Calhoun broke the silence, shifting in his chair, trying to draw everyone out of their shells. We're grateful for your interest, Dakota. We're excited to share the advancements we've made. Dakota's lips curled into a genuine smile, surprisingly disarming. Let's see what you've got. Then, with a nod, Jess stepped forward, unveiling the poster boards showcasing our latest designs, bullet points filled with collected insights and visions that had plagued us through sleepless nights. The tension was palpable, yet it was colored with a unique kind of vulnerability as we summoned the courage to present ourselves anew. As Dakota studied our work, I could see furrows form in their brow, indications of contemplation far removed from the scorn I once feared. That gave me a flicker of hope, but just as quickly, an icy shadow fell over my heart. What if they dissected every flaw bare? What if they returned to old habits, shredding our dreams into ribbons of doubt with casual ease, like they had done in the past? Interesting approach for the last model here, Dakota said, gesturing toward one of our innovative designs. Their tone was analytical rather than dismissive. You're pushing boundaries, and that's commendable. I felt Jess's hand tighten around mine, bolstering a shared sense of unity. Our project had always been a beacon of hope for us, born of sleepless nights and weary mornings, fueled by dreams that sometimes felt unreachable and too fragile to voice. Yet, just as we began to relax, an unforeseen clang reverberated outside. An emergency siren blaring, chasing away any budding sense of calm. Our eyes darted towards the window, apprehension replacing the fragile build of hope. What was that? Georges' voice cracked underneath the strain. Before any of us could react further, the room door swung open with urgency, revealing a frantic team member whose face was pale as parchment. "We have an emergency. Calhoun, there's been an incident at the site. We need you to handle this immediately. The whole project is at risk." Calhoun stood abruptly, his face a mixture of barely contained panic and determination. "What kind of incident?" "It's structural. There's a significant risk of a collapse in the West Wing. We need everyone, and I mean every one, to respond. It's chaos out there." Everything spun around me, reality fracturing for a second. The threat hovered over us like a dark cloud, casting deep shadows onto our work, and I could feel the fragile courage we had begun to build, swaying like a delicate bloom in a storm. "Dakota, this is not how I envisioned our meeting." Jess stumbled over their words, panic and confusion surfacing in them. "That I can help," Dakota offered unexpectedly. "Let me come with you. If there's a risk assessment needed, I can contribute. I know how to analyze structures." The words rolled off their tongue with surprising authority, a willingness to step into the fray. "But why?" George asked, voice threaded with skepticism. "Why do you care?" Dakota's gaze flickered with something deeper, perhaps guilt or remorse, before they steadied themselves and replied, "Because I believe in second chances, yours and mine. Let me help turn this disaster around." Calhoun seized the moment. "All right, we need to go now. We'll take every bit of strength offered." There was urgency in his tone, ushering us like a tide rushing to claim its shore. As we bolted from the room, I stole a glance back at the project that represented our dreams and fears, the weight of uncertainty clinging close. Dakota moved faster than I anticipated, their presence an unexpected anchor amidst the chaos that threatened to unravel. Yet, even as we rushed into the unknown, I couldn't shake the sudden disquiet that whispered in the back of my mind. What would happen when this all settled? Would their kindness be temporary, an illusion amidst pressure? Or was this a pivotal change, a path toward reconciliation? Just as we hit the exit, a deafening crash echoed behind me, sending cracks of fear racing through my veins. The air thickened with anxiety, and dread clawed at my throat. I turned back, and the sight that met my eyes sent a shockwave through my core. Our conference room, where hope had briefly dared to blossom, now bore the jagged marks of chaos, as a piece of the ceiling collapsed, leaving us standing on the brink of potential loss. And then, as I stumbled back, a thought struck me, cold and vivid: an unexpected hero or a burgeoning villain. In this moment, as we teetered on the edge of our future, trust felt as precarious as the very structure shaking beneath our feet. The frantic rush spiraled into a cacophony of echoing footsteps and clashing voices. We charged down the dimly lit hallway, urgency swallowing every hesitation we had managed to build in that brief moment of connection with Dakota. Shadows flickered against the walls, arising from the flickering emergency lights, behaving like ghosts from a past we desperately wanted to escape. As we rushed toward the exterior exit, the air around us seemed thick with foreboding, weighted down by the echoes of the conference room's collapse. Jess's grip tightened around my arm, their breathing erratic, their eyes darting to me as if desperately seeking reassurance. I offered a weak smile that barely penetrated my own rising panic. The world outside, once a sanctuary of fresh air, felt tainted by impending disaster. Calhoun was already barking orders, his voice authoritative, amplifying the tension in the atmosphere. Every second stretched agonizingly, as the reality of what awaited us grew clearer, chaos and fear threatening to devour our project and our aspirations. "Stay close," Calhoun shouted, leading us toward a sea of first responders mobilizing as if in a ballet of distress. The sound of machinery mixed with shouts and the wailing of sirens painted a vivid tableau of urgency before us. In the midst of this turmoil, Dakota's presence felt like an anomaly. The change in them, this willingness to step in, so fiercely plucked at the raw strings of my emotions. The deluge of familiar resentment came tumbling forth uninvited, fighting against the spark of gratitude that ignited whenever I glanced at their determined expression. Did this belong to the same person who had once raised our worth to the ground with their biting criticism? I wrestled internally with the confusion. "Over here," A voice half shouted over the chaos, pulling my focus back. A group of workers clustered near debris, assessing the damage, their bodies rigid with fear. I could feel the knot of dread knotting tighter in my stomach. Each tremor of the ground beneath me reminded me that the foundations of everything we had built were hanging by a precipice. I need a structural engineer now. I heard someone yell, and instinctively my heart lurched. I glanced toward Dakota and instantly grasped their determination. Go, I urged, even as my own mind screamed for them to stay close to safety. Dakota met my gaze, uncertainty flickering for just a heartbeat before they nodded. Stay safe. They'll be back, they promised, determination igniting in their eyes. With that, they dashed toward the worst of the debris, slipping into the thrumming chaos with the ease of one who had purpose. Jess turned toward me, their face pale and uncertain. Is it wise to let them go alone? After everything, a sharp thought entered my mind, but I pushed it down, despite the abysses of history and feelings. They want to help, I replied, my voice cracking under the weight of conflicting emotions. Maybe, just maybe, we're seeing a version of them we never anticipated. The sudden blast of noise cut us off, a shrill beep of a warning signal. A large piece of machinery shifted dangerously close to where Dakota had headed. The air grew thick again, challenged by a fresh wave of panic. Without thinking, I hurled myself toward the chaos, Jess quick on my heels. Dakota? I shouted, my voice sharp against the din. The weight of fear surged as I pushed through the crowd, desperation fueling each stride. When I reached the group of workers, I spotted Dakota, framed by the disarray, poring over blueprints while negotiating with someone in a hard hat. My pulse steadied for a fleeting moment, a salve amidst the surrounding anxiety, but it was fleeting as I caught sight of errant movement behind FEMA warning sign that had been missed. A massive beam creaked ominously, dangling with the promise of collapse. Look out! I screamed, adrenaline surging through me. Panic ignited in the air with my warning, and in that instant, time suspended itself, stretching as if the universe were holding its breath. Dakota's head snapped around, wide-eyed, but it was too late. A blinding flash of action erupted as I lunged forward, pushing yet another worker aside, risking my own safety to protect someone who once wielded their words like weapons against me. Everything shattered in a cacophony of noise and fear. The beam fell with a sickening thud, and in my mind, the impending doom took shape future where I had failed, where I couldn't draw upon the strength of humanity in the face of collective vulnerability. As darkness threatened to pull me under, I glimpsed a shadow accompanied by the surge of warmth. Dakota had trapped me in their hold, instinctively shielded me with their own body. The world felt like it stopped. A suffocating silence roared through my ears as something heavy pinned us both down. Panic clawed at my chest as I struggled to breathe. Every shred of my existence clung to the fleeting hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they were still an ally. Despite our tumultuous past, are you okay? Dakota's voice cracked through the haze, breathless and strained. Yet as my heart raced and darkness loomed nearer, I realized the true weight of their sacrifice, their desire to rescue us both, and how perilously close the edge had crept in this emotional storm. But beneath the rumble of uncertainty, an unexpected truth unspooled like a thread, promising revelations destined to turn our world upside down. Perhaps buried truths waited in the wings, yearning to emerge just as we teetered at the precipice of potential loss and identity. And in that moment, the echoes of my own heart racing alongside the weight of a history fraught with pain became entwined, leading toward an anguished realization: if I could only find the will to step into the truth of what lay ahead, perhaps we could be shaped anew. The world had grown quiet, a deceptive stillness wrapping around us, cocooning Dakota and me in an embrace of uncertainty. I could hear my own breath, labored and frantic, while shadows danced at the edges of my vision. The beam, heavy and ominous, pressed into my back, but all I could focus on was Dakota's steady presence beside me. You saved me, a whisper of disbelief escaped my lips as I gazed into Dakota's eyes. Their brow was furrowed, but there was no Farronly, a fierce resolve. Why? Because things can't be left to fester. We all deserve a second chance. The words flowed gently, wrapping around the raw pain of our past. With each utterance, the distance that once defined our relationship began to shrink. As the sirens faded into the background, The reality of our situation settled in. I could feel the weight of the beam above us, throbbing against my spine, but it became a muted sensation compared to the burgeoning connection blossoming between us. Dakota's hand found mine, and the simple grip was grounding. "We need to move," they urged gently. With a surge of adrenaline, I pushed against the wreckage, attempting to leverage myself and free us from the weight above. The pain shot through me, but I didn't care. Help was within reach, and our chance at redemption felt tantalizingly close. On 3, I counted, unable to contain my racing heart. 1, 2, 3. Together, we heaved with all our strength, the world above us groaning in response. After a long moment of exertion, we broke free. The beam shifted, narrowly missing us on its descent, and I gasped for air, feeling dizzy with relief and shock. As we stumbled clear, relief washed over me, but the emotions churning within still felt like a tempest waiting to break. "Are you all right?" Jess was suddenly at my side, worry dancing in their eyes, quickly scanning for injuries. I nodded numbly, consumed by the rush of adrenaline staining my thoughts. I turned toward Dakota, whose expression was a mix of concern and determination. "I'm here," they assured, breathless but grounded, their voice like a bomb against the chaos. The past felt razor-sharp, but in this moment, I found myself wondering if we could rewrite our narratives. The chaos around us began to subside. Rescue teams were busy evaluating the havoc that had unfolded, pulling together fractured pieces of our project, and our collective hearts still pulsing in uncertainty. Dakota took a step closer, their voice low and earnest. "We did it together. See how far we've come." I stared into their eyes and remembered all those moments, the piercing criticisms, the doubts, and yet, here we were, recalibrating the very fabric of our collaboration. Maybe we can both start over," I murmured, a flicker of hope igniting anew, slowly weaving through the fear. "Just maybe," Dakota replied, squeezing my hand before dropping it gently, a smile beginning to form the first of many, I hoped. But it was Jess who seemed to sense the shift. "If this project taught me anything," they began, glancing between Dakota and me, "it's that we need to redefine what success looks like. Success isn't just about winning over clients. It's about the connections we forge in the process." With excitement brewing in Dakota's voice, they turned to Jess. "Can you imagine what we could create if we combine everything: your light, our resilience, and a shared vision for what truly matters? We can redefine this project." George's incredulous laughter rang out. "And what's that vision exactly? One that defies our past failures?" "Yes," Jess exclaimed, their excitement contagious. "A vision that embraces potential and celebrates growth. Let's show everyone what we can truly bring to the table with authenticity, with compassion, and perhaps the most important ingredient of all, forgiveness." In that moment, I felt the vibrations of acceptance ripple through the space between us. Forgiveness wasn't just for others. It was for myself, for the burdens I had carried since that dreaded day. As I turned to Dakota, their determination burning bright, I realized the vulnerability we shared was the cornerstone of our evolution. "A second chance," I repeated softly, allowing the weight of the words to sink in, "and maybe a lifetime of shared aspirations." Each of us stood together, our eyes alive with possibility as the sun broke through the clouds above, illuminating our joint path ahead. As I raised my hand in solidarity, a smile started to unfold across my face, blossoming like a flower embracing sunlight for the first time. Just as we were ready to break forward, Dakota turned serious. "And we make a pact. We uplift one another, no matter what. No judgment on our pasts, only reflections of growth." "Deal," Jess, George, and I echoed in a harmony that felt surreal yet electric. In that moment, as the dawn broke anew in the wake of chaos, I felt the clouds of doubt lifting, revealing a horizon filled with promise. The future wasn't something to fear. It was filled with uncharted chapters waiting to be written, a story of resilience, hope, and transformed hearts. As we took the first tentative steps toward the future together, I felt something shift in my chest, as though at last I was learning to embrace all parts of me, including those that had once sheltered fear. And it was then that I realized, through the darkest moments, forgiveness is not just a destination. It is the journey that forever shapes who we become, and that was a journey I was now ready to embrace. One final thought echoed in my mind as I left the chaos behind. Sometimes, the most unexpected heroes rise not when the skies are blue, but when we learn to dance amidst the storm.